Call me sheltered, but I don't think most people are terminally ill chemistry teachers who become meth overlords. Most people are not K-pop idols who moonlight as demon hunters. Most people are not hobbits tasked with destroying a world-ending evil ring. Call me naive, but I do think most people want to take care of their family and leave behind a legacy. Most people know what shame feels like and struggle to accept a part of themselves. Most people know how vital perseverance and hope are in life. We don't connect with Walter White or Rumi or Frodo because of their narrative roles. We connect with them because of their themes. Despite their stories being outlandish or fantastical or improbable, their characters are grounded in themes that everyone can relate to. This is a common thread I've noticed in stories that a lot of people, including myself, tend to resonate with. A lot of popular stories tend to be grounded, meaning its core is relatable, consistent, realistic, and simple. I mean, there's a reason romance and the mystery thriller genres are the most popular genres. They are about some of the most relatable human experiences: love, fear, and death. Plus, you know, women buy the most books on average and tend to love love and murder. There's a reason most of the top TV shows are about relatable situations, or at the very least about relatable themes and characters. Audiences want to connect with the characters, and grounded characters are easier to connect to. Stories don't need to be grounded to be good or successful, but I do think they can live or die on the presence or absence of a grounded core. After all, if we can't connect to the story, there isn't much incentive to ever think about it again. And I don't know about you, but I want to obsessively think about the stories I consume for at least a few days after I finish them. I want that story hangover. And the most successful stories are the ones that people talk about long after they're finished. For better or worse, no one's forgotten about Game of Thrones. Now for the age-old disclaimer. This video is just my opinion, so please take it as such. If you disagree with me, I'd love to read your comment, just please be respectful. Also, this video will have spoilers for... It's on the screen. So if you're just listening, look at the screen, just for 1 second. Before we unground this video, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I'm going to be talking a lot about K-pop demon hunters in this video, so here is a low spoiler, bare minimum synopsis. Rumi, Zoe, and Mira are K-pop idols who moonlight as demon hunters known as huntrix. An invisible barrier called the Hanmoon separates the human and demon worlds, and it can only be strengthened by their singing. But main girl Rumi has a secret, and it starts affecting her voice and her relationship with her fellow demon hunters. But this same secret has her growing closer to demon rival K-pop idol, whoa, that rhymes,
Fantastic news.
Jinu, who leads Saja Boys, a K-pop group trying to destroy Huntrix and the Hanmoon. As Huntrix grows further apart, the Hanmoon weakens, and Rumi must overcome her shame and accept the parts of herself she has hidden all of her life in order to save the world. K-pop Demon Hunters has a lot of things going for it. The animation is beautiful and wacky, most of the songs are really good, and that's coming from someone who isn't a K-pop stan. The mythology is built into the story and world in fascinating and natural ways, the characters are well crafted, and the story itself is beautiful and is perfectly paced. But the themes are what truly elevate the story. At its core, K-pop Demon Hunters is about shame and self-acceptance. These themes are what the story is about, even more so than the characters themselves. You can feel their impact. And you can imagine that with a theme like shame, things can get pretty dark, and things do. That scene with Rumi and Celine near the end is kinda chilling. Brrr, no, don't, nope. This movie has been in the top 10 on Netflix for at least 7 weeks at the point of scripting this, and is their most popular animated movie ever. There is a reason K-pop Demon Hunters resonates with so many people, and it's because of the themes. They are so real and relatable. Shame and self-acceptance are two things most people, if not everyone, will struggle with at some point. These relatable themes not only add depth to the movie and the characters, but they keep an otherwise very wacky and fantastical movie grounded. K-pop Demon Hunters has, as the kids like to say, touched grass. It's easy for a story, especially a fantasy, to become consumed with the spectacle of it all. The magic, the weapons, the action. The spectacle is a huge reason why fantasy fans love fantasy. I mean, I love watching some guy wield a sword against another guy who has magic and there's just a boom, action,
What are you talking about, buddy?
But spectacle does not connect us to a story. Audiences need to feel something real to emotionally connect with a story. This often comes in the form of characters and themes. And this isn't just my personal preference, by the way. This is what the majority of people want in the modern day. Audiences want realism, relatability, and for characters and stories to feel grounded and real. You can even see this desire embodied in trends. Hard magic systems, where there are defined rules for powers, are far more popular now than soft magic systems. Whimsy is fun, don't get me wrong, but most people want to understand how the magic of a world works. It makes the unbelievable feel believable. Mental health is also explored far more in stories than it used to be. Even in fantasy, where tropes like evil for the sake of evil and good for the sake of good are arguably the most accepted, mental health has become a common crux for heroes and villains alike. Villains and heroes are more nuanced than they were 50 years ago, allowing audiences to feel more empathy for villains and see more flaws in heroes, all in an effort to relate to them. Now, K-pop Demon Hunters, in my opinion, would not be grounded without the themes. The protagonists would just be quirky K-pop idols who kill demons, and the villain would just be a demon who can sing. Yeah, you might be able to relate to certain personality traits, but there would be nothing to foster an emotional connection. This isn't me dragging the characters either, by the way. I think they're really good characters. I just think it's interesting that they're basically entirely characterized around the main themes. It's very common for characters, at least in the content I often consume, to have their own character themes that are unique to their arc. Think Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender and his redemption theme. That's not a main story theme, but it's his main character theme. It's basically a way of developing characters beyond basic personality traits, main story themes, and main narrative. So with that in mind, the main characters of K-pop Demon Hunters are not developed beyond the main story themes. They are essentially extensions of the themes. Rumi is ashamed that she is part demon and that she has hidden this from her friends. Jinu is ashamed he betrayed his family for his own gain. Mira is ashamed that she wasn't a good child. Zoe is ashamed of her imagination because people thought she was weird for it. Their individual arcs to self-acceptance are entirely rooted in and reliant on the movie's main themes. They don't have their own character themes. Their arcs are essentially all the same, overcoming shame to self-acceptance. The characters are purely there to benefit the themes rather than the other way around, which, at least in the stories I'm used to consuming, seems to be more common. Characters and theme are intimately linked, of course, but themes often feel like a thing happening to the characters, and the characters are trying to find their way through the themes to some kind of resolution, with the focus being on the characters. K-pop Demon Hunters very much feels like the focus is on the themes, which I think is evident in how the characters are crafted. Now, there's nothing wrong or abnormal even about this, but it can lead to a problem that I sometimes notice in stories when they're written in a way that it all connects and harmonizes and it's so technically perfect that it loses any grit. It's too technical, it's too purposeful. It's perfect on paper, but it doesn't have any realness to it. Writing techniques are important, but when everything is a technique and written the correct way, any realness it wants to convey, any connection it wants to establish, can feel manufactured, and then can lose relatability. Real life isn't like a story. And I'm not saying people should write exactly like real life unfolds, but writing techniques can get in the way of emotionally connecting with the audience. Like the car accident you're gonna get into in 5 years isn't gonna be foreshadowed. I mean, I'm foreshadowing it, but you get my drift. Why am I going on about this? I think the writers of K-pop Demon Hunters choosing to write everything for the sake of themes wouldn't have worked so well if 1. They weren't good writers, and mainly 2. If they chose themes that didn't lead to such gritty emotional places. Shame is one of the darkest emotions a person can suffer. Self-acceptance is one of the hardest things a person can do, and they can be all-encompassing. If you're going to write something from a technical writing perspective, and in my amateur opinion, practically perfect, then the subject matter has to get messy, and even those stories can sometimes feel sterile due to the writing. Like sometimes Breaking Bad, don't shoot me, but sometimes it feels too perfect. Just sometimes. Is that blasphemy? I don't know. K-pop Demon Hunters is a beautiful and messy story about shame and self-acceptance, and it makes you feel those obsessive emotions by having every facet of the story be about them. Yes, there are some minor themes that pop up, like criticizing the entire idea of having idols, but the main themes are what propel the characters and the narrative forward. The themes act as a grounding element that people relate to, giving the characters their relatability, their drive, and their heart. So you might think you have an emotional connection with Jinu, but really, you're just connecting with how the themes are presented through him. And you like his voice. You know that grounded core I was just talking about? It's a Tootsie Pop, a center that's surrounded by layers of insanity, a story that can be conceptually dramatic or epic or even bizarre. And then in the middle, there's the chocolate. I didn't write this down. Most stories are at the very least dramatic on a conceptual level, imitating real life but still a more grandiose version of it in some way. Epic and bizarre stories start to deviate from reality more, with higher stakes than the average person will ever be able to relate to, and circumstances or occurrences that would never happen in reality. Not that we'd want them to. Of course, the epic and bizarre are commonplace in fantasy, but they can be in other genres too. For example, Saving Private Ryan is kind of an epic, but it's not relatable to your average Western viewer in 2025. Stories like Lord of the Rings, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Xenoblade, Breaking Bad, K-pop Demon Hunters, these stories are all conceptually dramatic, epic, or eccentric in some way, but they maintain a level of relatability and emotional connection because the hearts of their stories are grounded. Audiences want grounded stories, but that doesn't mean they don't want epic stories. The key here is to make the concepts epic, while making sure the characters and themes remain grounded. A story that is both conceptually and thematically epic can certainly be interesting, but won't necessarily connect emotionally with an audience. I think Dune is a really good example of this. It's not relatable, not that it's supposed to be. Now, I've only watched the movies, don't kill me, but there is very little about the story and characters that offers an emotional connection, at least to me, which I just realized is probably why I'm not the biggest Dune fan. Dune's concept and major themes are very epic. They aren't grounded at all. High concept and wide scope themes can be relatable, but they aren't necessarily going to connect with the audience. For example, Dune's major themes include religion and free will, which are definitely both relatable. However, for a theme to be grounded and able to foster a connection with the audience depends on not only what the theme is, but also how it's presented. Free will is also a huge theme in the Xenoblade games, for example. The free will theme in Xenoblade is more choosing your own destiny even when fate seems to have decided for you. The free will theme in Dune is more no matter what you do to change it, you can't escape your destiny and fate. Now, while the latter can be relatable to everyone at certain points in their life, the general human experience is one of choice, unless you believe in predestination. I can't help you there. How Xenoblade presents free will is also relatable on an aspirational level. At least in Western cultures, people tend to believe, or at least want to believe, they can change the course of their lives, that they are in charge, and that if they persevere and make the right choices, no matter how hard they are, they will be successful. So while Xenoblade and Dune are both conceptually epic and have very similar themes, Xenoblade is thematically grounded, while Dune is thematically epic, which tends to be harder to emotionally invest in. Now, I know you're here for K-pop Demon Hunters, but another good example is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's one of those shows that threatens to grow very tiring. It can be non-stop action for like 5 episodes in a row, has extremely bizarre ideas. Bottom of the barrel, Cassidy, you're getting splinters. And the characters and concepts are so over the top and campy that it could end up being a very audience isolating show, meaning that the viewer could struggle to connect with it. However, this is what Araki, the creator of the JoJo manga, said about the series. I'd say living with a positive outlook is the theme of JoJo. It's a celebration of humanity. At the core of JoJo, beyond the insane powers and body horror, are a group of people fighting for what's right, persevering and triumphing against evil, and really representing the best of humanity, despite their faults and flaws. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is basically Lord of the Rings. No, not all of us are Samwise Gamgee or Jonathan Joestar, but most of us want to be like them. Aspirational relatability can be just as potent as personal relatability, especially if it's grounded. Whether a story is a crime drama or a full-blown fantasy epic, there is often a risk of that story being consumed by the spectacle. I had a little back and forth with a commenter on a previous video, and what that conversation basically boiled down to was spectacle is interesting, but it can mask the lack of depth in a story. We were talking about John Wick specifically. Spectacle, whether that's magic or drama or style, etc., is very entertaining, but when it's the main focus of a story, it can lead to the more grounded story elements being overshadowed and forgotten about. It can lead to there being an entire lack of grounded story elements. Both of these problems, in line with the theme of this video, will likely lead to an audience who isn't emotionally invested. I enjoy the John Wick movies. I wasn't emotionally invested beyond the first movie though. I mean, even if Fast and Furious has the whole thing. Spectacle doesn't conduct connection. K-pop demon hunters could have very easily been up in the clouds, consumed by demon hunting action and mythology and the music. Not that I wouldn't have enjoyed that. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure could have bulldozed. Get it? Any emotional core with its crazy style and concepts. Conceptually epic stories often have a lot of spectacle, and it takes good writing to make sure that's not all the story becomes. What's really good writing is when the spectacle and epic concepts service the grounded elements. K-pop Demon Hunters does exactly that. Like I said in part 1, everything in that movie served the themes. The mythology, the action, the music, the style. It all helps build the themes. 5 of the 7 songs are directly about shame and self-acceptance. The mythology of the world is the literal reason why Rumi is ashamed and why Gino struggles to escape his shame. The animation style is quirky and entertaining, but it also makes sure to show the progression of Rumi's shame in her character design. For example, Rumi's golden outfit is the only one that's primarily a dark color. Yes, that's partly because she's the lead of the group and the movie, but also the darkness she's hiding is about to be revealed. Or maybe the curtain's just blue, I don't know. K-pop Demon Hunters strikes a perfect balance of conceptually epic and thematically grounded, which in my opinion means the grounded elements come first. It's awesome when a movie looks really cool. It's even better when it also emotionally stabs you. Of course, none of this is to say writers can't write something or the audience can't like something just for the sake of the bizarre concepts and epicness and spectacle and style, but leaning into all of that is not the same as emotionally connecting with it, and I'd be willing to bet the latter leads to a longer lasting, stronger connection to that story. We can wish we were stand users and demon hunters, but what we truly relate to in stories is the humanity of them. I have a friend that likes to say something along the lines of, sometimes you just want to read a story about defeating evil with the power of friendship. And it makes sense. The epic, it's strange and dramatic are entertaining, but who hasn't imagined defeating a Dark Lord with their buddies? Considering I've spent a lot of time talking about K-pop Demon Hunters, that actually wasn't the catalyst for this video. Watching season 2 of Arcane was like watching someone get their heart ripped out. Arcane is a fantasy. Magic and time travel exist, little fluffy creatures and catgirls roam around. It's a fantastical setting and a fantastical show. But the story of Arcane, at its core, is not fantastical, it's grounded. At its core, Arcane is about relationships. Sisters Vi and Jinx, blood brothers Vander and Silco, friends Jace and Victor. These characters and how their relationships evolve is the heart of Arcane. At least in season 1. As I said before, season 2 felt like the heart of Arcane was gone. Season 1 was a family drama set in a high fantasy setting with some politics sprinkled in. But season 2 was a full-blown epic fantasy. These relationships were no longer the backbone of the show. Instead, the show was heavily focused on science versus magic, civil war, and Ambessa Medarda for some reason. The relationships felt like an afterthought, squeezed in between scenes of witches that have very little to do with anything, and Arcane Jesus. Don't get me wrong, there was relationship and character development in season 2, but it definitely was not the focus. Season 1 was dedicated to the characters. Season 2 was dedicated to world building and plot. I am losing my voice. Stories are allowed to evolve. I'm a writer, I know how it goes. But I do think something is lost when the core of the story evolves into something entirely different. Especially when that evolution involves shifting the focus away from characters, which are often the emotional backbone of a story. Now, I am biased as I prefer character-driven stories, but that preference makes up at least 50% of the modern fantasy audience. That's not an official stat, but that's based off the current zeitgeist. No matter what a story is driven by, if it suddenly switches is, it's not going to feel the same. It'd be like if Lord of the Rings suddenly became driven by plot rather than themes and world building. When a story loses its driving factor, its heart, is it really that story anymore? Or has it become something new? Something that resembles what it once was, but isn't the same anymore? Is Arcane Season 2 the same Arcane as Season 1? It looks like it, but it certainly doesn't feel like it. At least not to me. It's a ship of Theseus sort of situation. And look, I get I'm in the minority here, but I don't know, Season 2 really bothered me. I'm also probably going to do an Arcane video at some point, because I have a lot more thoughts on this show, so stay tuned if you're interested. A story that starts off in the clouds, not grounded in reality, can get away with it. You have the expectation from the get-go that there isn't going to be much emotional depth, but a story that starts off as grounded and emotional, and becomes less grounded and less emotional, well, you kind of lose what pulled you in the first place. It's like when Elle died in Death Note. The cat and mouse and the relationship that was built between Elle and Light was a huge part of that story. I haven't watched it in a while, but it was kind of the emotional core. I mean, Light's a psychopath, so it's not like he's having any emotional turmoil on his own. It's the relationship he establishes with his rival and enemy Elle that serves as the human center for a lot of the story. But when Elle dies and then gets replaced by two other investigators who don't have a rapport with Light, the protagonist, the show loses the emotional core and has to find a new one. And as far as I know, no one really likes the new one nearly as much as the original. Ain't that how it goes? Speaking of Death Note, K-Pop Demon Hunters is almost definitely going to get another movie. I think there's already talks about it. Sony likes money, and Demon Hunters is their new golden goose. Like this song. I'm not against a sequel or even a prequel necessarily, but I am kind of skeptical. I spent a lot of time in part 1 talking about how K-Pop Demon Hunters is theme-driven. The characters have their own motivations, personality traits, backstories, but their character arcs and character themes are the same. Shame to self-acceptance. Rumi might be the main character, but Zoe, Mira, and Jinu's arcs are all the same. At the end of the movie, during the final song, the main characters are actively accepting the parts of themselves that are the root of their shame. In real life, I understand that shame and insecurities, which can be a huge driving factor of shame and is for most of these characters, don't just go away. Self-acceptance is often a long journey. But K-Pop Demon Hunters is a movie, and only had so much time to wrap the character arcs up. So like most movies, it ends with the resolution of whatever problem the characters are having, i.e. self-acceptance. Rumi, Mira, Zoe, Chinu, their shame has been defeated, and they have reached the nirvana of self-acceptance. It is not implied in the slightest that shame and self-acceptance are going to be a continuing struggle for them. These themes, and thus these character arcs, are wrapped up. Now, I also tried to establish that these themes are the major impact in making the story relatable and thus grounded. They are the emotional core of the story, because as I believe, the characters would be mostly unrelatable and kind of flat without them. Not that they're not good characters, but they're just, without the themes, they're a bit more static. They don't have character-specific arcs that need resolving. The creators did say that they prepared more plot lines for the characters, especially Zoe and Mira, but because the focus of the movie is on Rumi, these extra plot lines were kind of pushed to the side and instead functioned as backstory in the actual movie. Mira's complicated family life and Zoe's struggle between her Western and Korean identities were not presented as separate from the main themes of shame and self-acceptance. Their backstories are the reasons Zoe and Mira struggle with shame in the first place. There are no other themes tied to these backstories to lead to them being unresolved. Yeah, we don't know everything about them, but because the movie tied their backstories to the main themes, when the main themes are resolved, so are their backstories. Arcane Season 1 did not wrap up the themes, the story, or their surviving character arcs in the slightest. It needed a sequel. K-Pop Demon Hunters did wrap up the themes, the story, and the character arcs. Now, it's fair to say that K-Pop Demon Hunters wasn't guaranteed a second movie, so they had to wrap it up, but that does leave a potentially major problem for the second installment. The writers would need to give the characters a new struggle. I can't see a second movie being about shame and self-acceptance without making the first movie's resolution feel cheapened. Or at the very least, the characters will need to find something new to be ashamed about. I mean, that's my goal every morning. And this is why I'm a bit worried about a second movie, because the emotional core of K-Pop Demon Hunters are the themes. Without them, what else is there? Are Rumi, Mira, and Zoe going to feel the same with a new theme driving their story? Or maybe it will be character driven instead. But then the writers will have to develop them more than the first movie, and again will have to choose new themes, because again, they didn't have their own unique character themes. K-Pop Demon Hunters 2, 3, 4, 16 risks losing the heart of the story, its relatability, and thus its grounded feeling. All the things that made the first one so good in the first place. This isn't me crapping on the writers, by the way. They're obviously very talented, so as long as they stay on, I think whatever comes next will be good. Just hopefully it gets better treatment than Arcane Season 2. It's good, but it's not Arcane anymore. And I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to see a story I care about ruined because the writers lose sight of what made it so good. K-Pop Demon Hunters, in my opinion, is pretty much perfect, and I think that's the cause of its meteoric rise and potential meteoric downfall. When something's perfect, it's hard to continue it and keep it perfect. Lightning doesn't usually strike twice. Unless you're this guy. So K-Pop Demon Hunters 1 through 7 should be really good. 8 though, that's where we draw the line.
Reality こそが作品に命を吹き込むエネルギーであり、リアリティこそがエンターテインメントなのさ。
Everyone wants to have their head in the clouds sometimes, but we're wingless creatures. Our feet belong on the ground. Stories are just an extension of humanity, so they're not any different. Now, of course, writers aren't obligated to write a grounded story any more than audiences are obligated to consume them. Nor am I saying writers should stop writing bizarre and fantastical stories. What I am saying is that, beneath all the insanity and wild imagination, if the audience has something to grasp onto, something familiar, something real, then they might not only enjoy the story, but connect with it. Grounded stories are important. For a long time, especially in fantasy, characters were someone to aspire to, but not someone we could actually be. I can't fall down 7 flights of stairs and get up, but I wish I could. Not everything in a story has to be grounded and relatable, but it feels really good when something is. We live in a pretty isolating world. Stories can help us feel connected to something. The desire to relate to stories and explain humanity through them goes back to the beginning of civilization, when Hesiod decided Pandora would open the box. But perhaps on an even deeper level, a level that's kind of indescribable and irrational and uniquely human. That feeling when you're reading a book or watching a show or listening to music, when you're consuming art and there's something that just clicks, something that connects to a deep part of you, that's just one of the best feelings ever. K-Pop Demon Hunters, Breaking Bad, Lord of the Rings, Arcane. These stories are dramatic and outlandish and pure fantasy, but we connect to them. There is any number of things a person can love about a story. It can be the gravity-defying poses of JoJo, the aesthetics of Arcane, the world-building of Lord of the Rings, the music of K-Pop Demon Hunters. But what truly connects us to stories is when we can relate to them, when the characters feel human, with all the bad and good that comes with that, when the themes mirror real life, the light and dark parts, when the story is grounded, it comes to life. I drank the soda pop and it gave me a story hangover. I'm done ranting now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you take my opinion as anything but gospel, and I hope you check out my books in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you ever come across a demon, just put on some K-pop and you'll be fine.